Welcome to Doctor's House Call. This is your chance to get in gear with Dr. Gear, a duly trained naturopathic medicine doctor and doctor of chiropractic, board certified in family medicine and minor surgery. Brought to you by Payson Health and Wellness Center at 801 East Highway 260 every Tuesday afternoon from 5 to 6, live on KMOG. You can call in now and speak to the doctor at 474-2427 with any questions, or after the show, call Dr. Gear during regular office hours, 474-7409.
Good evening. Welcome to Doctor's House Call. Tonight, our topic is Keith Wassing's story. He was a Navy weightlifting champion at the age of 23, returned from the brink of death at age 24. That sounds interesting. And explore your body, the world's greatest drugstore, your body. Wow, I never thought about it that way. Good evening, Dr. Gear.
Hello, Mike.
Good evening, Dr. Wyrick.
Hello.
Hey, here we go. So if you have a call, question, call us at 474-2427. If you're out of state, it's 928-474-2427. And
you know, this story from Keith is so common in my practice. I hear it all the time. That's 57 years of my practice plus many years before that. This next year, my family will be 100 years in this practice of naturopathic medicine and chiropractic. What we hear is over and over and over again this kind of a story, and that is Keith's story. Keith said in 1986 he was on top of the world. He had just won the All-Navy Weightlifting Championships and had set a national drug-free record in the bench press. Get that, a national drug-free record in the bench press. His full-time job became to lift weights and compete, and he loved it. He attended college at night and did a number of exhibitions and talks in the community. He had minor celebrity status, both in the naval community and in his city life. It was good. Life was wonderful. So shortly after returning from a competition tour, he states he began to experience some sinus headaches, and his training started to plateau a bit. He kept a training journal since he started lifting in 1978 and tracked his progress very carefully. Now, in 1978, he was 14 years old. So he began his weightlifting at age 14. I'm going to reiterate, by age 23, he had become the Navy's weightlifting champion and the national drug-free bench press champion. So the headaches were not bad, just annoying. That was at age 24, or 23 rather. So he went to the Navy dispensary and was given some medications. The meds worked like magic, except they gave him nuclear diarrhea. Now, Dr. Wyrick, why would headache medication give someone nuclear diarrhea?
Well, I'm not sure what nuclear diarrhea is. I suspect it's explosive diarrhea, which is a very powerful urge to defecate with explosive force. Headache medicines I wouldn't normally associate with that, so I'm at loss for predicting. But not knowing what the medicines were, I can't comment.
Well, the medication that he was given in the beginning was minor, and then he was given more of it, more medications. And so he went back to the doctor after he got this diarrhea, and he was given drugs to stop the diarrhea. So the diarrhea went away. But then he experienced severe dehydration after that because of the diarrhea that he had, and he was admitted to the hospital. After many tests, he walked out with 3 more prescriptions. So his health rapidly began to spiral downward, he says, and soon he was spending his days at the hospital going from one doctor to the next. How many of you out there have gone through this yourselves? Not being able to find the cause of the problem, just going from one specialist to another, hoping someone would come up with an answer. Within a month, he was taking 18 different drugs a day, which amounted to about 80 individual pills. He quickly became homebound and disabled, unable to work, drive a car, or really do much of anything. The only food he could keep down was applesauce and sometimes apple cobbler. You know, back when I was at my worst, because of my injuries to my spine and my bad diet, I could only eat corn and potatoes, mashed potatoes and corn. That was all I could eat. Everything else just didn't agree at all. So most nights, this is Keith now, most nights he would get a blanket and a pillow and sleep with a pillow on the toilet, because the dry heaves would begin around 1 a.m. and last until sunup. On good nights, the heaves were 4 minutes apart. On bad nights, they were 2 minutes apart. He went from a solid 220 pounds to around 165 pounds. He says he looked like death warmed over. This went on for over a year, and most of it's still a blur. He had to have someone drive him any time he needed to see the doctor. Fortunately, he had good friends in this regard. He saw all kinds of doctors and was even seen by one of President Reagan's doctors at Bethesda. That's the Bethesda Naval Hospital in Bethesda, Maryland. No one really had an answer for what was going on, except that his immune system was failing. Well, Dr. Wyrick, if somebody is taking 18 different medications, 80 individual pills, all of them prescription drugs, do you think that has an effect on the immune system?
Well, I'm sure that there are drug interactions that are going on, and yes, the immune system can be affected by a wide variety of drugs, but I don't know what drugs he was taking, so I can't be more specific. But yeah, that kind of polypharmacy really is a death spiral downward.
So he had a diagnosis of Epstein-Barr and severe chronic fatigue syndrome. Those were discussed, those diagnoses were discussed as possibilities. So he had a meeting with the head of the Naval Hospital in Charleston, North Carolina, in the summer of 1987. Now, summer of 87, remember in 1986, he had just won the All-Navy Weightlifting Championship. And here he is, a little over a year later. He was brought into the office of the head of the Naval Hospital in Charleston. And that head of the hospital told him he should get his affairs in order, because he felt that Keith had only a few months to live. So Keith says the news was actually a relief. He wanted to die and end the misery. He had a friend drive him to a mall later that week to buy gifts for his family for the following Christmas, knowing that he was probably not going to be alive. That's pretty significant, isn't it? Now, while he was in a B. Dalton bookstore in that mall, a man asked him if he was okay. He said he could only walk maybe 15 to 20 steps before he had to stop and rest. But he told the man, I said I was fine, because I had gotten so tired of telling everyone the story. This guy persisted a bit, and he told me he was a doctor, and that maybe he could help me. I told him I had seen some of the best doctors in the world. Then he told me he was a chiropractor. I think I laughed for the first time in over a year. I told him I had internal health problems, not neck and back pain, which was the limit of my views on chiropractic. He persisted that I come to his clinic, and about this time my friend offered to drive me to the clinic the next day. I agreed with absolutely no intention of going to this quack's office. On the drive home, my friend said something like, "Well, you should give it a shot. What do you have to lose?" So I agreed to go. I went to the office the next day and did the whole new patient process. The doc brought me into the exam room and began his examination. I was about as skeptical as you could possibly be, when all of a sudden he says, "Hey, Keith, did you have a bedwetting problem as a kid? Wow, how in the world did he know that? I had a classic bedwetting case for most of my childhood for 4 to 5 nights a week. I never spent the night with a friend, and I grew out of it by the time I was about 15 to 16 years old. That's a long time to have bedwetting, isn't it, Dr. Weyrich?
It's certainly beyond the norm.
Way beyond. So his parents spent all kinds of money on therapies and treatments, but how could this quack have known about that? He told me he could tell from examining my lumbar spine. That's the lower back, the small of the back. And he talked about his bladder and the nerves to it. He now had my attention. If he pulled that one out of his butt, well, it was a good one. He adjusted me that first day and sent me home with instructions to return. I woke up the next morning with a stiff and sore neck. Actually, my entire back was sore. Not severe pain, but just very sore. I knew this guy was a fraud. I thought to myself, he hurt me yesterday, and today he's going to fix me up? Sorry, don't buy that. No more chiropractic visits for me. I shaved, showered, got dressed, and as I was walking down the hall to the kitchen, I was hit with a ton of bricks. I had just slept through the entire night for the first time in about 15 months. I had showered, shaved, dressed, and was not wiped out with fatigue. I was even a bit hungry, so I made some scrambled eggs, which I love, and have been unable to eat for over a year. I sat down on the couch and waited for breakfast to come back up. It never did. I continued getting adjusted and flushed the meds within the first week. It was not short-term miraculous, but each day I got a bit stronger and do more things. It was a huge victory to be able to walk to the mailbox and get the mail. Within 2 weeks, I was driving again. Within 2 months, I was back in the gym training and ended up far surpassing my previous lifts. But I could not figure out what chiropractic had done for me. I would ask the doc and get sort of a vague answer. I ended up going to chiropractic orientations at other offices in the area in hopes of figuring all this out. But I was disappointed in that all of the new patient orientations I attended were spinal hygiene classes, how to lift right, bend your knees, drink water, etc. I could not find much at the library or on periodical microfiches either. That was long before the internet, long before you could go to Google and get all this information. So most of what I read tagged chiropractic as being somewhat effective for neck and back pain, and that was it. Finally, the doc gave me some old, musty-smelling books with a weird green color to them and told me that maybe I would find my answers in them. He had never actually read them. The first volume was Bigness of the Fellow Within by B.J. Palmer. I remember reading it and thinking, this guy was really out in left field. The more I read it, the more sense it made. And I began going to the medical library here in Charleston and reading volumes of anatomy and physiology books. Guyton's, Harrison's. I saw this incredible congruence between the books on how the body actually worked and Palmer's writings. Eventually it sort of clicked in my brain, and I retired from competitive lifting in order to focus on communicating the chiropractic message. I don't always like sharing the message, but I don't feel that I have the right not to. If a person rejects the message, that's fine with me. At that point, they are no longer my responsibility, and I can move on. I don't play golf or softball. My free time is spent sharing the chiropractic message. I do between 250 and 300 talks each year on chiropractic, and plan on doing so as long as I'm on the earth. I owe that much to the chiropractic profession. That's Keith's story. Keith became a chiropractor. There are so many chiropractors who became chiropractors because of their stories. I went to college, chiropractic medical school, and I call it medical school because my chiropractic college was a medical school. It mimicked the osteopathic medical school. We just didn't do any major surgery. But we delivered babies, we set fractures, we reduced dislocations, we used herbal medicines, we used nutrition, and we did a lot of spinal care. Learned how to do x-rays, electrocardiographs. We did all kinds of general practice medicine activities. That was my education way back then, 1960 to 1963. One of the students in my school was a pharmacist. And I said to him, he was in my class, and I said to him, if you're a pharmacist, how come you're going to be a chiropractor? He said to me, well, over the several years, I was handing out medication to patients. Now, he didn't say this, but it's just like Keith's story. The patients started getting more and more and more medication for their problems. And the problems never went away. They just needed stronger medicine. He said, finally, people would stop coming in for medication, quite a few of them. And he would see them 6 months or a year later, some of them a couple years later. He'd say, well, hi, how you doing? What have you been up to? How come you're not taking, where are you going for your drugs? He said they told him, all of them told him, we don't need the drugs anymore. We went to a chiropractor and got fixed. He said, after a couple of years of hearing all that, he said, I'm in the wrong profession. Here I am giving out medication to people, primarily for musculoskeletal pain, and they're not getting any better. They go to a chiropractor, don't take any drugs, and they get well. Something's really wrong with this educational system. So I'm going to be a chiropractor. That's what he told me. He was in middle life at that time. One of my other fellow students was already 60 years old. He had started chiropractic school with me. He had been an attorney in the military, Army Corps. He had been the head and owned his own lumber company. And then there was sickness in his family. And I don't know how many of you remember this, but there was a prophet, they called a sleeping prophet, named Edgar Cayce. And Edgar Cayce told him what needed to be done, and he needed to go to a chiropractor. Went to chiropractor, got well. A lot of other people went to chiropractors and got well from Edgar Cayce's writings and teachings and his seances. So Earl Bradford was this man's name. So he decided he was going to be a chiropractor. So he started, here he was 60 years old, starting out to be a chiropractor. He went back to his town in Portland, Oregon, became very successful, and practiced for 20 years. His sister-in-law came into the practice with him, and she worked with him. He was very, very helpful to me because of his maturity. I was a snot-nosed kid at that time. So this situation of Keith coming back from the brink of death is not unusual. We see lots and lots of patients like that. I just had a man that I treated today. Last week, on Friday, he came in, and he had been to the dentist, had all of his upper teeth pulled so he could get bridge work. He was really in a lot of congestion, a lot of soreness. He had been in that for like 5 days, not being able to sleep good at night. And so I talked him into letting me treat him he was real sore. He was not sure that I could do that without hurting him. But I did, because I knew what to do. So I treated him. He was in today. He said, I slept all night without any hard drugs. All I needed to do was take a couple of aspirin. I slept through the whole night with all that swelling in my mouth. I treated him previously because his vision was going bad. And after his first treatment, in his good eye, he said, boy, I can see better. We still don't know what the pressures are in the bad eye, because right after that, he went to the dentist and had all the teeth done. So it's going to be a couple months yet before we get a pressure reading on the bad eye, because he had glaucoma. But I've treated lots of people with glaucoma and reversed the pressures by relieving the stress in the cervical spine and under the skull. In fact, my first rotation was at the Chicago Eye Hospital, where I worked at the elbow of an ophthalmology surgeon. That's an eye cutter doctor. And then he was in a whiplash accident, and he saw double after the whiplash accident. And he came to me and he said, why am I seeing double? My eyes weren't hurt. I thought to myself, holy cow, here you are, very well educated in medicine, very well educated in eyeballs. You're a surgeon. You do precise work, and you don't know the connection between the cervical spine and the coordination of the eyeballs. So I gave him a book called The Cervical Syndrome, written by an MD orthopedic surgeon, Ruth Jackson, first female orthopedic surgeon in the United States. She was one of my teachers. Taught me what x-ray views needed to be taken in order to see what's going on. So after he read that book, he never gave it back to me. He kept it. I did give him a couple of adjustments on his neck. Made him feel a little bit better, made his eyes work better. So, a lot of people think that our bodies are not interconnected. But they are. They're totally connected. The first tissues that are formed in the body that are identifiable after the stem cells are starting to make things up, you get your notochord, you get your spinal cord, and then everything else comes from that. So we're going to visit the world's greatest drugstore now, and the greatest drugstore in the world. So what would we expect from it? First of all, we would expect it to be able to make any and every drug we would ever need. That would require a large supply of material, because the human body needs thousands of different drugs in order to run properly. Dr. Wyrick, what would a partial list include?
Oh, you have insulin, cortisone, adrenaline, antibiotics, digestive juices, laxatives, sedatives, drugs that raise our blood pressure, drugs that lower our blood pressure, drugs that control our body temperature, drugs that give us energy necessary for a healthy sex life and for pregnancy, drugs to keep our brains healthy and our eyesight keen, on and on.
So the list seems endless. Wow. I'll let you in on a little secret, everybody. Scientists still don't know all the drugs we have in us. They're discovering new ones all the time. Dr. Wyrick, what would the second thing be?
Well, we would expect that this greatest drugstore in the world would give us only the right amounts of each drug we need to keep healthy, not too much and not too little. For, you see, too much of a drug would upset the delicate chemical balance that must be maintained. And an imbalance of our body's chemicals could cause much damage. Too little of a drug would be, well, too little. And that would also hurt our body's chemical balance. The amount we need to receive must be just right.
What would a good example of that be, Dr. Wyrick?
Well, that would be an example like insulin, which is produced in the pancreas and which helps us regulate sugar.
So what does too much insulin do?
Well, too much insulin causes a disease called hypoglycemia, which would make us weak and dizzy. Too much would cause diabetes, or too little would cause diabetes, which, strangely enough, would also make us weak and dizzy and could kill us. There are many other powerful drugs that are needed, like the ones that destroy cancer cells or that fight infections. The wrong amount of a drug like that could also kill us. That is how important the right amount of a drug can be.
You know, it's so important to have the right amount. So third, we would need careful directions to take the right amount of the drug only at the times we would need it. That would be a big job because our bodies demand change from day to day, hour to hour, and even second to second. A good example of our changing chemical needs would be our old friend insulin.
Well, our bodies need insulin to help digest the sugar in our blood. Without it, we would die in a few hours. We may need a lot after a heavy meal, much less 4 or 5 hours later, and so on until the next meal. An example of a drug that we may need suddenly within seconds is adrenaline.
Well, let's say we encounter a bear in the woods. Our bodies immediately demand extra energy in order to save ourselves. Adrenaline is quickly shot through our veins, giving us sudden strength, heightened alertness, and extra energy to protect ourselves. Yes, drug demands vary hour to hour, even second to second. It would be some great drugstore that could supply us with the exact amount of the thousands of drugs we need every changing moment.
Well, number 4, the greatest drugstore would have to be open day and night, 24 hours a day, every day, without missing one day for holidays, earthquakes, floods, or even vacations. Since we need drugs all the time, this drugstore must be never to close.
Fifth, because this is the greatest drugstore, everything in it would have to be free so that we would all be able to have everything we needed, whether we had money or not.
6, this drugstore would need the fastest delivery system in the world so that our many urgent needs could be immediately satisfied, even within seconds.
7th, and probably the most important thing needed by this greatest drugstore in the world is the greatest doctor in the world. The greatest doctor would be able to know and prescribe exactly what our bodies need at the right time and in the right amount. Without this information, the world's greatest drugstore would be useless. Wow, those are some requirements to satisfy, and yet, believe it or not, such a drugstore does exist, and it can bring us perfect health. It has everything we need to cure cancer, heart problems, the common cold, sore throats, aches, pains, broken bones, skin problems, and every one of the thousands of other diseases we can develop. It can even keep us so healthy that we won't get diseases in the first place.
Now, before you go running off to look in the yellow pages under drugstores, let's listen a little bit more.
So I'm sure many of you have already guessed what this greatest drugstore in the world is.
It's the human body.
Yes, your own body does all the wonderful things just described. It makes every single one of the thousands of drugs you need. It makes them in the right amount, at the right time, at the moment's notice, and free of charge. It does all that better than any regular drugstore in the world ever could.
So, do you think about everything that happens in your body? No. Most things happen without your conscious control. You don't have to tell your stomach, produce 2 ounces of digestive juice, or tell your pancreas, please make 1/4 ounce of insulin. Also, your heartbeat, blood pressure, temperature, and breathing are controlled without your conscious awareness. You don't have to think about running your body, because along with the ability to create all the chemicals you need and the ability to run all your organs, you have within you an intelligence.
This intelligence isn't something you got from going to school or from your parents or friends. It came with your body when you were born, and for that reason it's called the inborn or innate intelligence. Everyone and every living thing has innate intelligence.
Whether you are a college professor,
like you, Dr. Wyrick.
Oh yes, I like to teach. That's part of the naturopathic creed, docere.
Or you never finished high school, for never even went to school at all. This intelligence is the same.
This innate intelligence is the greatest doctor in the world that tells the greatest drugstore in the world what to do. It writes the prescriptions, so to speak. Where does this doctor live? Well, not in a $10 million home with a swimming pool and a Rolls Royce.
Quit talking about my house.
Well, when is your Rolls Royce going to be fixed up?
Another couple weeks.
Okay, great. I look forward to riding in that. So this is a doctor that uses the brain as its nerve center or headquarters. It sends its prescriptions for running your body along the communication wires of your body, the nerves.
Messages from your brain go across your nerves to all parts of your body. There are billions and billions of nerves. They go to every part of you, carrying vital message and also conducting the vital energy of life itself. Instructions are sent along your nerves from your innate intelligence to every part of your body, telling your body what to do to remain healthy. These instructions tell your glands and organs and cells what chemicals to make, what parts need repairing, what invaders need to be destroyed, where cancer cells might be lurking.
As long as your doctor can communicate with your body, it will do everything it can to keep you and make you as healthy as possible.
So health is when your innate intelligence is communicating with all the parts of your body. Well, then you may ask, if health is when the innate intelligence of my body or the doctor within me is communicating with my body, shouldn't I be healthy all the time and never get sick?
Well, that's a good question.
When the communication lines, the nerves between your innate intelligence and your body, aren't working properly, then your private built-in doctor can't communicate with your body and you won't be healthy anymore. Your body wouldn't know the right chemicals to make, the right time to make them, or the right amount to make them. Maybe you wouldn't be able to fight infections properly, and a simple cold would turn into pneumonia. If your chemical balance is wrong, then dangerous cells, which your body would have destroyed, could grow into cancer.
As a matter of fact, almost anything could go wrong if your innate intelligence isn't properly controlling your body.
When your innate intelligence isn't communicating within your body, we say that your body's in a state of dis-ease. It's not working right. When you have disease, your chance of getting all kinds of sickness and disease is much greater. When you have dis-ease, you have what is generally referred to as low resistance. Oh my God, that's in times of COVID-19? Oh, that means that you can't effectively adapt to changes in your internal or external environment.
Some people may go to a regular drugstore to make up for what their own bodies can't produce due to this dis-ease. No drugstore, however, can give you exactly what you need in the right amount at the right time. Every external drug you take causes damage to your body. Doesn't it make more sense to correct the cause of the dis-ease? Then your body would work properly, the way it was meant to work, and it could make its own drugs.
So, Dr. Wyrick, there's a statement here that we just mentioned to everybody, that every external drug you take causes damage to your body. How does it do that?
Well, especially allopathic drugs seek to...
Now, what's an allopathic drug? You mean a pharmaceutical?
The pharmaceuticals that are
Synthetic
recommended by
drug, yeah.
MDs primarily,
Synthetic artificial drug.
that are intended to turn off whatever part of the body is, quote, unresponsive, or misbehaving, unquote.
Or turned on too much.
Sometimes it turns it on too much, but most allopathic drugs tend to work by turning off something. We talk about beta blockers, alpha inhibitors, and
Well, we have sympathomimetic drugs to increase the sympathetic nervous system.
Yes.
We have parasympathomimetic drugs to increase the parasympathetic nervous system.
Yes, we have all of that.
So the problem is getting it out of harmony. When it's out of harmony, that's when we start to have disease. And you have to use your own nutritional molecules to, I'm going to use the term denature. Now, what does denature mean, Dr. Weyrich? I don't, technically, what does it mean? I mean, what does it mean in practicality?
Well, to denature means to make it unnatural and generally toxic.
Well, if you're going to take a synthetic drug and you're going to make it not toxic anymore, you're going to denature it, because its nature has to be changed so that it's no longer making symptoms in the body.
Yes, and that's largely the role of the liver.
Well, it's biochemistry of our body, and we have to use our nutrition in order to give the cells of our body the necessary fuel to denature the synthetic chemistry that people take.
And
this
also,
is why Keith Warsong, with his 18 different drugs, 80 different pills a day, was going downhill so rapidly. And as soon as his body started working together, he was able to flush those down the toilet, which we don't do anymore. We don't flush them down the toilet. Now we give them over to the police department because they've got a big bin there that you take all those prescription drugs and throw into it.
yes, they're as concerned about prescription drugs turning up in the drinking water after it goes through the water cycle.
So how do we get rid of disease, Dr. Weyrich?
Well, first we have to find out what's causing it. Diagnosis. For that, we have to know a little bit about the body. The brain sends messages to all parts of the body by way of the nerves. Nerves connect the brain with all parts of the body and are protected by a long hollow tube made up of 24 bones that look like rings. These bones are vertebrae, and they make up the backbone.
So the vertebrae are stacked upon each other like a pile of donuts or bagels along the back. The nerves start as a spinal cord and then divide into branches of nerves that extend through the openings between the vertebrae to reach all parts of the body. If any vertebra were to get out of place, the nerves inside the tube would be injured, and their ability to carry messages and life energy would be affected. The brain's messages to differentiate parts of the body would be distorted, and disease would result. Now, if these joints of the spine get jammed up, the problem is the lymph vessels get blocked, and they can't relieve the tissues of the waste molecules. It's so simple. It's so mechanical. It's all in physics. So how can your intelligence regain control of your body? Dr. Weyrich, have you got an answer for that?
Well, the simple answer is all that is necessary is to get the misaligned, or what is sometimes called subluxated, bone or bones back where they belong. Then the messages will once more travel without interference over the nerves to the whole body.
That's the job of the doctor of chiropractic. We start to feed the nerves again because we get rid of the blockage to removal of the waste, allowing the nutrition to get to the nerves. So the doctor of chiropractic is specially trained to check the bones of the spine to see if any of them are out of place, damaging nerves, If any are out of place, the doctor of chiropractic will adjust them into motion so that the innate intelligence can return them to their perfect placement. That's what a doctor of chiropractic does. Once the nerve control between the brain and the body is restored to normal, the right chemicals will be made again in the right amounts at the right time, and the greatest drugstore in the world will be working properly once again under the direction of the greatest doctor in the world. That's what health is all about. The services of the greatest drugstore in the world do not cost money, but they are not entirely free. To get them, you have to take care of your body and obey nature's laws. So what are these laws, Dr. Wyrick? What are nature's laws?
Well, number one, eat proper food so that your body will have good raw materials from which to produce the chemicals that make up the drugs you need.
So how do we find out what the proper foods are for a person, for each person individually?
Well, we look at how the body responds to different foods. One way we use in our office is the IgG test. We look at the person's genetic makeup, and that gives us suggestions about what are the best foods for the person.
We also have a very simple test called the S3 test. What does that do, Dr. Wyrick?
Well, that evaluates whether we're eating enough of the foods that contain a chemical called carotenoids, which is the color that makes carrots orange and other fruits and vegetables bright yellow, orange, red. And it's an important antioxidant in the body.
So what's the next thing we have to do besides having the right diet?
Well, number two is get proper exercise so that your equipment will be in good working order to manufacture the drugs you need.
And then you have to get appropriate physical and emotional rest and relaxation.
Yes, and finally, most importantly, keep your nerve supply free from nerve interference so that all this fantastic equipment you possess will be working harmoniously with the doctor within you.
Make sure your own built-in doctor is in control of your body. You need to come in and see us at Payson Health and Wellness to be evaluated and to make certain that everything is correctly working so that your greatest drugstore in the world will work properly. And by the way, if you like the story of this, either Keith Wassung's story or the greatest drugstore in the world, we have a book available and the story of Keith available free at Payson Health and Wellness. And we also have a few books here at KMOG. You can stop in and pick one up. And that way you can review that very nicely. The story will be on kmogcountry.com and it's on drwyrick.com. Now, chiropractic has been found to be 42 times safer. This is published in Spine.
Safer than what?
We're going to get to that, Dr. Wyrick. We are going to get to it. So what's one of the most important reasons to visit your doctor of chiropractic instead of a medical doctor if you're suffering from back pain? It's a whopping 42 times safer. Here's why. A new study compared the safety of seniors 65 to 84 years old using spinal manipulative therapy with those using opioid analgesic therapy for chronic low back pain. In reviewing 5 years of data, the study authors found that the adjusted rate of adverse drug events was more than 42 times higher for people who made their initial choice of opioid therapy instead of chiropractic therapy. In reaching their conclusion, the research team reviewed Medicare claims data spanning a 5-year period on fee-for-service beneficiaries aged 65 to 84. They were continuously enrolled under Medicare Parts A, B, and D for a 60-month study period, and with an episode of chronic low back pain in 2013. Patients with a cancer diagnosis or history of hospice care were excluded from the analysis. Isn't that interesting? And this was in the journal Spine, peer-reviewed journal. And we've talked about peer-reviewed journals in the past. This is published, by the way, in our 2-Year Health newsletter that just came out today. So I'm giving you hot off the press information. Of course, the study was done some time ago, but how many studies are done that you don't ever hear about? So there's one you hear about. Dealing with the symptoms of menopause. Think natural. Dr. Wyrick, you handle patients who go through menopause, and you can help them tremendously with your natural hormone approach.
Yes, sometimes a patient chooses an herbal approach, and sometimes a patient wants to restore their youthful hormones using what are called bioidentical hormone creams. And I can work with the patient either way.
You have a protocol that's pretty good too, I'm told, by all the women.
Well, I have several different protocols. The protocol you're probably thinking about is the Wiley protocol, which is very popular among women who do not, for some reason, have a uterus. And it is very good at reproducing the hormonal ebb and flow of a young woman. And one patient that I have said that she, quote, felt like a spring chicken again, unquote.
I've heard that from more than one, let me tell you.
Yes, there is a downside to the Wiley protocol, and which is that if a woman has a uterus, they may resume their menstrual cycle.
You know, I had a woman who was 72 years old, this is many, many, many years ago now, who started her menstrual cycles again. She got very upset with me. And all I did was straighten out her body and get her on the right diet. Boy, I'll tell you, she was quite a woman.
Well, it sounds to me like her body was not yet done and it just had an impediment that you removed.
I did. I've done that with lots and lots and lots of women. We find that. Any of them that have menstrual cycle problems, most of the time we can correct it with getting the spine fixed.
Yes, and menstrual cycle problems include too heavy, irregular, painful. All of those are things that respond well to both chiropractic treatment as well as hormone balancing.
Right, and you know, those of you who are listening, who are politically active, and you have contacts with Congressman Gosar, I want you to send him a note. Go on his website and communicate with him and thank him very much for signing on to the Modernization of Medicare Coverage of Chiropractic, H.R. 2654, because he signed on last year and he signed on again this year. Now, that would allow Medicare beneficiaries to have all of the services that chiropractic doctors are educated to provide in a drug-free healthcare system, and evaluate them. Right now, the only thing that Medicare pays for is spinal manipulation. It's the only thing it's paid for the last 50 years.
Which is kind of strange because you would think that Medicare would pay for the doctor to do an examination before he started manipulating.
They don't think chiropractics are doctors because the American Medical Association. But we are trained in it. We're fully capable of doing it. I practiced general medicine for a lot of years. So now we're going to talk about our golf game and all the golfers that we have here in Payson. We just had a contest recently, and there's been a lot of contests over at the golf courses. We had one recently for the Veterans Helping Veterans, and they were very successful. And the person who came in second, I'm told, was our very own Dr. Ergy Gumicinelli. the psychiatrist who's been with us on the radio show many times. I treat he and his whole family, and he says the treatment I've given his spine helped him get back on the golf course, and had he had time to practice a little more, he would have been first instead of second in this Veterans Helping Veterans contest. Golfers have been benefiting from chiropractic care for many years. However, it's only recently been receiving attention in the media. Golfers of all types, from the weekend warrior to the PGA touring pros, utilize chiropractic because it's a natural method to better health and performance. Now, Nota Bigay, 4-time PGA Tour champion, says,
chiropractic care has been an instrumental component of my sports performance and preventative health strategy.
How about that? 4-time PGA champion. Golfers are under a tremendous amount of stress to perform and excel on the course, and chiropractic helps the body to adapt and respond quickly to any changes in the environment. So Sean Atkins, PhD, exercise physiologist, said,
I would estimate that at least 90% of world-class athletes use chiropractic on a regular basis to prevent injuries and to improve their performance.
The science of chiropractic is founded on the premise that a proper nerve supply is essential to controlling and regulating the functioning of the human body. So Dorland's medical text, 32nd edition, published in 2012, said,
An intact nervous system will lead to optimum functioning of the human body.
How about that? Classical Medical Dictionary states you have to have a proper nervous system functional. The World Book Encyclopedia of Science, published in 1997, said,
all body systems would be immobilized without the nervous system. It controls and regulates every body activity down to the workings of the tiniest cells.
When the spine is in its optimum structural position, the nerves are protected and optimal communication exists between the central nervous system and the rest of the body. The vertebrae of the spine are susceptible to certain stresses and forces which can cause them to lose their proper structural position. These minor misalignments of the spine, referred to as subluxations, cause nerve interference and weaken the entire structure of the spine. Vertebral subluxations can be caused by any force or stresses that the body cannot adapt to. So the American Journal of Pain Management said,
homeostasis and nervous system function are ultimately connected with posture.
How often does your golf pro tell you posture is important when you're going to swing a club? Anyone who engages in athletics can benefit from regular chiropractic checkups to ensure that their spine is balanced and free from structural stress and subluxations. When the spinal column is brought into balance and alignment, the body's nervous system and body biomechanics, posture are maximized. Dr. Wyrick, we have in our office a piece of equipment that's very, very technical, and you use it on people all the time.
You're talking about the Myovision System.
I am.
Which,
tell us about that, will you?
Well,
how that can help a golfer with a swing?
Okay, so myovision means looking at the muscles, seeing the muscles in action. And so we can have a patient go through a series of standardized motions, and we can measure exactly what the nerve signals are activating the different muscles in the back and neck. And we can also see how the body's is moving in response, and all of this shows us where the imbalances are.
And so that makes the person, once we can fix all that, their swings get better, and they reduce their golf score, you know. So the American Journal of Pain Management had this to say.
Posture affects and moderates every physiological function from breathing to hormonal production.
And then Thomas Harris, MD, in Sports Medicine Guide in 1989 said,
postural strength and coordination are essential for injury prevention and sports performance.
By observing an athlete in action, a chiropractor can often detect and prevent a structural problem that can lead to injury as well as poor performance. And that's what our Myovision does. The U.S. News and World Report said, in an average year, 25 million people visit a doctor for injuries that they suffer as a result of athletics. In professional sports, injury is the number one reason for all early retirement. Overall, $67 billion is spent each year for the treatment of athletic injuries. Henry Windsor, MD, published in 1986, The Chiropractic Theories.
Organs supplied by impinged nerves exhibit pathological changes, and the more serious the impingement, the more serious the damage. So, Dr. Geer, what is an impingement?
That's a subluxation, and that's the impingement on the lymph vessels that help the body get proper food to the nerves.
It's a squeezing or a closing down?
Right. So anyone who engages in regular golf, as well as other athletics, can benefit from regular chiropractic checkups to ensure their spine is balanced and free from structural stress and subluxations. There are essentially two categories that athletic injuries fall into: acute or traumatic, which is usually the result of a sudden impact or unseen force, and repetitive overuse, such as swinging a racket or a golf club. Virtually every workout results in micro-injuries as the body is torn down and then rebuilt through rest and recovery. Chiropractic has helped thousands of athletes, amateur and professional, overcome an injury without resorting to cutting surgery. So Barbara Bunkowski, LPGA Tour professional, says,
I have found that chiropractic keeps me flexible and pain-free so that I can perform at my highest level. The benefits of chiropractic have improved my golf swing, putting less stress and strain on my body, and allowing me to be a more productive golfer. I believe it also helps prevent other associated injuries that are very common on the LPGA Tour.
So the true benefit of regular chiropractic care is optimal performance. Now, we're going to close with a statement from former Surgeon General of the United States, C. Everett Koop. He said,
more people die of a sedentary lifestyle than from smoking. And he was the doctor who started the big campaign against smoking.
So I want to thank all of you for joining us here on Doctor's House Call. I hope we've been of some help to you today, giving you information that you can use in your lives. We would like very much to be able to help you at our offices, Payson Health and Wellness Center, and we're always there. We give you a free consult. If you bring your disc with you, we'll go over your lab findings, or we'll go over your x-ray findings with you. We're there for you. All you have to do is give us a call and make your appointment Tuesday through Saturday morning. We'll be there for you. In fact, I often am there on the weekends with regular patients who have had new injuries. I was just there this weekend for people with new injuries. Had two of them come in.
Weekend warriors, huh?
Yeah, well, one of them came all the way up from Phoenix.
Wow.
Because she had this acute pain in her rib cage, and we had to fix it for her. So, yeah, the weekend warriors and all those others who haven't thought about getting it until no doctor's available, and then it hurts like heck, and so then they've got to go either to the emergency department of the hospital where all they get is drugs, or they give me a call and come in and we fix it for them. So that's what we do.
Been there, you've done that.
We do that all the time.
Yep, that's great.
I had to take care of a massage therapist yesterday morning because she had slammed her wrist in a cabinet door and caused great swelling on a tendon that worked the thumb. So I spent an hour using intention directed energy healing to it and reduced the swelling greatly. And then I had her get some ice packs on it and to help the body finish the healing. But this is what we do.
Okay, and you do it well. So once again, the phone number there to make an appointment for free evaluation, 474-7409. 474-7409. See you next week, same time, same station.
You've been listening to Doctor's House Call, aired every Tuesday afternoon from 5 till 6 p.m. To call Dr. Gear after the show during his business hours at Payson Health and Wellness Center, 801 East Highway 260, call 474-7409 or go to his website, drbobgear.com. That number again, 474-7409.